Right.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for Magic is Real. I'm Shannon. I'm your host. This is the podcast where we talk about all things spiritual and metaphysical with a focus on near death experiences and other spiritually transformative experiences. If you like this podcast or you like this episode, would you do me a favor and please like, subscribe, share, comment below? It really helps to the podcast to grow, and it's a way to support the podcast for free. With that being said, I am very happy to have with me today Dr. Kim, who is a licensed therapist in California, and she's an author of two books about dreams and a dream worker and has so much knowledge about the spiritual world. But today, our focus is going to be on dreams and spirituality and how they combine. So, Dr. Kim, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me on, Shannon.
It's such a pleasure. We met at the International Association for Near Death Studies conference in Phoenix, and it was such a wonderful time, and it was so much fun to hang out with you, and we talked, and I was so interested in the work that you're doing. You're doing so many different things, but I would like for you to share from your heart, in your words, what it is that you do professionally.
Sure. And it was so great to meet you at the IANDS conference. It was my first one,
Mine
and
too.
what a wonderful community. I really look forward to
Incredible.
going
Me
to the
too.
next one. And as far as professionally, as you said, I'm a licensed therapist in the state of California, and I think of myself as a holistic therapist because I'm trained in, cognitive behavioral therapy and know a bit about psychodynamics. And I'm also oriented as a humanistic therapist, but I bring to the table a spiritual perspective as well. So I think about our somatic, I've had training in somatics in my doctoral program. So I think about the body, I think about spirit, and how all of this comes together in our, day-to-day lives, how we walk through the world. So that's why I call myself a holistic psychotherapist a lot, just so that it's clear that we're looking at our whole selves. It's more than just what we think or how we behave, what we do. It's also how we feel, how we relate to others, how um, we are with spirit. And so that's my professional role. And other roles, I'm a sister and a daughter, a dog mom. I'm also a tia, as they call me, so an auntie to two wonderful nephews and a cousin to many. And so I really think of relational qualities in my psychotherapy as well. So it's also very relational based. Then I write and I teach. So I stay pretty busy. That's I guess what I do on the professional side. And
Yeah.
um, I love the outdoors. I love nature, time with animals. So the arts as well. I do quite a bit. I enjoy so many things, that
Yeah.
is offered in this physical body in this lifetime. All the things we can do.
Me
So
too. Me too.
there's so
That's
much
that's
to
our
enjoy.
sensitive nature and our
Mhm.
empathic nature to just be drawn to all things beautiful and connected and love oriented. So yeah, so first of all, we're going to have links to your all your stuff. Tell
Thank you.
me the names of your books about dreams that you have written and published, first of
Sure.
all.
So the first one came out of my doctoral dissertation, and that book is published by McFarland, called Extraordinary Dreams, Visions, Announcements, and Premonition Across Time and Place. And so, as I said, that book really emerged from my doctoral work, which was on announcing dreams of pregnant women, primarily. Even though announcing dreams do happen to fathers and other family and community members, their research was geared toward women that were already pregnant and the dreams that they remembered and that impacted them during pregnancy that had to do with a pre-birth communication, as we call it, something where the dreamer, in this case the pregnant mother, and the child to be is having some kind of communication. And so that drove that first book. But I was also very interested in visitation dreams or dreaming with deceased loved ones. And that also appears pretty strongly in the book as well. So it's like the book Extraordinary Dreams is like these two bookends, pre-birth communication, after-death communication, and how that impacts us, as people in this world, how we stay connected to those after they leave the physical body and can build relationships before a birth, before one fully comes into the physical body as well. Because many announcing dreams happen even before conception. But for my study, we looked at just pregnant women that had their pregnancy medically confirmed. So that's the first book. And then the second one is on dream medicine. It's called Dream Medicine. And that's really what it's about. And the subtitle is the intersection of wellness and consciousness. And that is really different. Also by McFarlane's imprint called Top Light Books. So that one is not maybe as heavy or academically, not it's written in APA style, American Psychological Association style, as someone with a PhD in psychology, but it is a little more, let's just say, reader friendly. And that book was very interesting. I was starting to write again a little bit after Extraordinary Dreams was published and say, okay, what am I really writing about? And I was just writing things, but I didn't feel really inspired. And then all these dreams and synchronicities, especially through the beginning and middle of 2019 were happening. And I didn't quite understand them, but I started to see I was getting dreams related to health. And then in 2019, not only did I get a breast cancer diagnosis and go, aha, that's what I'm writing for, but I also then learned that I was in like adrenal fatigue. Dutch tests showed a flat cortisol line, which one physician told me she was more scared of that than the actual cancer diagnosis. And other things that look at the gut, like Geneva or GI map tests, can tell you, or they told me that I had a really low score showing a gut dysbiosis. So this shocked me because I thought I was really healthy. I am a long time, kind of like athlete, martial arts background, snowboarding, um, uh, dance. I mean, very active background, usually had a lot of energy, although around that time I did not. Um, thought I ate pretty healthy. But again, as my workload increased in those years, I again started to just eat more junk food because you're just trying to be quick and get by. Traveling distances because I was working in a few private practices. So it would be, there's nothing around here. Just go get some fast food and eat it on the freeway as you continue to your next job. That wasn't good. And the test showed that. So here I am going, that's what I'm writing this for. And a spiritual friend that I respect very much in Arizona, one day I remember her saying to me, oh, dreaming, that's your medicine. And she's a traditional, I'll just say practitioner and psychologist, but of indigenous ways. And that when she said that to me, I thought, yeah, I always remember that. And I said, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And so that's how the book got that title. And the subtitle, The Intersection of Consciousness and Wellness, came from all the dreams that I had before the diagnosis, about a year's worth, showing me something's going on with your health, showing me where the issues were in my body, and that I need to, do something about it. And so I used dreaming. Once I was diagnosed, I used dreaming to help me navigate. Also, something really interesting that year too was that I wanted to go to a retreat center in California called Esalen. I had never been there. So I signed up for a retreat and just kind of picked something that was convenient on my schedule, but also might have something to do with consciousness because I'm a longtime meditator, and I found one on yoga nidra. So I went to that and learned the integrative Amrit method with Kamini Desai and John Vosler. And when I was done with that, I thought this was wonderful. I'm learning about this other way, this sleep-based meditation that can actually propel you into lucid dreams at night, which we'll talk more about, I know.
Yeah.
But then at the end of that training, it was in the beginning of 2019, I want to say April-ish. And I thought, this is close to hypnosis. I'm already certified in that. I don't need to learn this. But something got at me, I always want a good deal. So they said, oh, but you're halfway through the training if you want to continue towards certification. And so I found that I was doing the homework. And then in September of 2019, I completed the certification, going, Kim, what are you doing? You don't need another certification. But I liked it. It was another form of meditation that I found to be really easy. And then again, all of this taking place in 2019, the dreams, the synchronicities, the yoga nidra certification. So then in October 2019, I get the breast cancer diagnosis. And it was like, I understand, spirit, creator, thank you. I get it. I'm using yoga. I used yoga nidra for years. I still do, but for years, anytime anxiety flared up about the cancer diagnosis, I did a yoga nidra. Then felt really at peace for hours. It'd flare up again. I do another. So I started doing them about twice a day. And then again, synchronicities just kept happening, things that were strange. There were many, but that made me also go to the point I said earlier. This is why you're writing this book. You ask spirit to keep teaching you. And again, I do want to put a little disclaimer that this is my personal story. By no means anything I'm going to share today is by no means am I directing or suggesting what anyone else should do. By no means as my personal thoughts and feelings around what treatments I chose and didn't chose. None of that should be borrowed or mapped onto someone else's experience. And again, this is my own personal experience. So with that said, I can then share that the dreams guided me to do things where I then would go toward non-conventional, non-allopathic wellness and healthcare for my treatment. So I have done zero conventional. I will probably always do these integrative types of treatments forever. I'm at my 5-year anniversary right now. And I just realized that if and all the physicians I've worked with have reminded me, if your body builds tumors, at this age, it might always do that. So you really have to have a different lifestyle and a different way of being in the world, eating, processing emotions, because emotions and cancer are very much related. And so dream medicine, then finally, I start understanding why I'm writing at the end of 2019. And then that eventually comes out. And so it talks about all kinds of states of consciousness, meditation. I think I mentioned a little bit about journeying, what some call imaginal journeying or shamanic journeying, different names for a practice that's very similar. And of course, dreams. And so that really tells you what dream medicine is about. I share a lot of the dreams that I had in those years and share what I did and didn't do. And I'm hoping that, is, responsible for why I'm doing well and sitting here talking about it today. So it's a pretty heavy book. It's
Yeah.
a pretty heavy book. And I continue to keep learning about wellness from a really holistic perspective, how I treat my body, how I think, how I take responsibility for how I feel.
Mhm.
My spiritual path, it's been even more affirmed and confirmed, as I move forward
Yeah.
with that. So that's I was about to say in a nutshell, but that wasn't a nutshell. That really gets into
Yeah,
what that book is about. So
but
thank you for
really well told. Yeah, no, thank you.
thank
It's
you.
really, I appreciate that. PMH Atwater and I were talking today about how thoughts become things, and so,
Yeah.
it's not stopping your thoughts, but it's just being aware of your thoughts and, kind of redirecting where we can without stuffing down feelings and avoiding them. We do want to acknowledge them, but
Mhm.
also being aware of how we interpret them and how we assign meaning to the thoughts, because what we believe is what we will see. And so that's a whole other interesting topic. But yeah,
I
so let's really dive into dreams because I am very interested ever since can remember. And I remember being 2 years old very vividly because it was sort of an intense period of time. And I remember learning to fly in my dreams or having very lucid dreams. Always dreamed in Technicolor. So to me, I have a really strong interest in dreams. So let's just start by, I mean, yes, there's a scientific explanation for dreams, but I think just we can start just anywhere you like about. There were several things that we discussed that we would touch on in terms of how dreams are sort of a reflection of spirituality and can be spirit communication and soul projections and those sorts of things. So just wherever you want to start, it's not really a question as much as just a launching pad for let's talk about dreams and spirituality.
Sounds great. One of my favorite topics, as you know.
Yeah.
And there's a few things, yeah, I'd love to share. So I believe, as many cultures around the world do, that there is a connection between spirit, creator, and our dreaming, and that when we dream, in essence, we're traveling, we're soul traveling. So dreaming as soul travel can be a way to kind of conceptualize or think about what's happening when our physical body is asleep. And we perhaps travel or soul travel every single night, even when we don't remember it. Now, we can have varying degrees of conscious awareness during these let's just say dream episodes where our spirit explores different dimensions, different places. There's really no time and space in that dimension. And we know that from people who have out of body experiences while they're sleeping, dreams, lucid dreams. And we can explore those realms consciously. Some people do this naturally. I never did. I had to take some pretty serious training, which involved lots and lots of meditation, AM and PM, lots of meditation and different types of meditation to really start to learn what this, what consciousness, what my soul or spirit, what was going on here. You know, we know we're in these bodies. We're supposed to be in these bodies. You know, we're supposed to feel them and feel our emotions. And, that's why we were put here. But at the same time, we can stay connected to something greater, maybe where we came from. Uh, Babies, sometimes share those types of stories with their mom while they're in utero or with their families. Or as we know from reincarnation studies, especially all the wonderful documentation from Ian Stevenson, that toddlers sometimes remember lives that they had and can even direct you on how I remember seeing a film by how children were pointing out, how fighter jet planes were working or directing them to other areas of the country where their last family was. So if we believe the stack and stack of anecdotal evidence, we see these patterns, and I believe these truths that show we, are greater than our bodies, and we can train ourselves to grow our consciousness and take that with us as we sleep. through lucid or conscious dreaming. And so I believe it's so important to keep a dream journal, because we won't remember all this stuff. We think we will. And it's true that I've had some dreams that I can remember from 30 years ago because they were
Right.
so powerful. However, the vast majority of things we will forget, because that's just how memory is. And so I really encourage people to keep a dream dictionary of not only they're just more mundane or everyday type of dream, but all of them, their most profound dreams, their precognitive dreams. And we won't know often that they're precognitive unless we're tracking them. So I have learned that if we want to see or be shown how dreams actually can predict what's to come, we need to write them all down, because usually it's the boring precognition that we're experiencing, tiny things. Maybe it's we dream about something that came in our mailbox that was unexpected, but it was so mundane we forgot about it. And there, a week later or a few days later or even a month later, there it is. And if we have a record of that in our dream dictionary, we can remind ourselves, no, we're not crazy. This is how consciousness works. It's not just reductionistic, mechanistic, Cartesian cause and effect kind of reality we're in. We're in a reality so much greater that I think we've just scratched the surface on understanding it. Especially Western, as someone trained in more of Western science, we're just scratching the surface. So we can do a lot with lucid dreaming, but we don't have to be lucid, because there is a really cool practice where we can have dream relationships with ourselves in other ways through a practice called dream incubation. Are you familiar with that?
No, tell us all about it.
Okay, so let me just take a sip of water here. Dream incubation, and there's some other names for it, but it is essentially a practice where we ask for or call in a dream that we'd like to have for 101 different reasons. But what I did when I was writing dream medicine was to do my best to incubate dreams for health reasons. So the way I did it was I found a statement that I was going to use. And I want to share some examples, because I think anyone listening can use this for manifesting all sorts of things. We want to keep statements in the positive and the affirmative. So I would say ask open-ended questions as well, like, show me what I need to know about my health. That's one example. We don't want to ask what we don't want, or, again, staying in the positive and affirmative is really the best way to move forward, not just because cognitive psychology shows that's how we process information easiest, but because from various spiritual traditions, this seems to propel us forward in the best way. So again, I'll use the example, show me what I need to know about my body, or show me what I can do this week for my health. And we can get even a little more specific about foods and things like that. So I'd find my statement, write it on a little scrap of paper or a little 3x5 card. I'd practice my sleep hygiene practices and really pray or meditate on that statement or question before bed, put it under my pillow, and again, have the intention that I'm going to dream on this, dream the solution or the guidance or answer, dream it up. So then as I'm falling asleep, I'm thinking, about this statement, and we can address the dream, the stream source. Some call it the dream maker. We can address this dream source in any way we want. We can call out to whatever spiritual or religious figure we believe in for this guidance, because there's a consciousness there. So this is not a practice that is limited to any particular spirituality or religion or tradition. So that's what I would do. I would do what was meaningful to me with this positive or affirmative, open-ended kind of statement or question. And then anytime I woke up, middle of the night or early morning, I'd write down whatever it is I felt or remembered, and then just wrote a dream title. So Robert Moss was a teacher of mine, and hopefully I'll see him again. He's on the East Coast, and he always reminded me, is title your dream. So that's what I do now under his direction and guidance. And that itself, without thinking about it, can tell us a little bit of a hint. Why did we title our dream that? What might that be trying to show us? And sometimes the
Mm.
responses I would get would be more metaphorical, symbolic, or vague. Other times it was nothing. And other times it was very straightforward and direct. So as I continue to incubate more dreams, I would ask them to give them to me straight up. Kind of like, do you work with tarot?
Yes.
Tarot cards? Okay. Or tarot. How do you pronounce it? I've heard different
Some
pronunciations.
people say tarot, and I just say tarot, but I'm not
Okay,
necessarily
tarot
right.
or tarot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was like, I know it's not taro, but it's I've heard different ways of pronouncing it.
yeah,
So when I don't work with cards so much anymore, although I would like to get back into it. But I would tell my cards, I don't read reversals. I'm only gonna read you straight up, and and ask them, remind them, here's the relationship we've had on what these things mean through
yeah.
our time of working together and through sleeping with my cards and doing my daily, personal readings, sometimes just a four card spread, and reminding myself, this is our agreement. So I would do that with dreams as well, and say, please show up in a very direct fashion if you would. And if not, and I needed more information the next night, I would try to go back and say, let's continue that dream to give me a little more information in a way that I can understand it. It also helped to be part of a almond method dream group for 8 years. So that helped me learn more about a different frame of dreaming. So I learned about more metaphorical, archetypal, symbolic. And Dr. Stanley Krippner invited me to that many years ago. And so, of course, I went, and I stayed with that group for 8 years. It was in a Shirley McNeil's home, who's a really amazing hypnotist in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area at Berkeley. And it was in her home, and from her and Stan Krippner and the participants, I learned so much about other ways to think about and interpret my dreams. But still, I always ask them, please, dream maker, give it to me straight up direct. So when I got dreams after the cancer diagnosis directly telling me to eat cauliflower, another one was collard greens. Those were the two vegetables that were very specific and direct, the most direct, specific dreams about food. And so that's another thing we can do. You could look up a paper that Dr. Ed Kellogg wrote called the Dreamitarian Diet. Super cool paper. And this talks about how you can incubate dreams for your diet, your personal diet. And Dr. Bhaskar Banerjee is also, who presented with me at IANDS, the IANDS
Okay.
conference in Phoenix. And he writes about, and talks about this as well in his teachings. He teaches and in his presentations. So that's another way we can incubate dreams for health and to really trust our spirit. But maybe another little bit of a disclaimer that I began this work seriously in 2004, 2005. And that so by the time I got diagnosed in 2019, I had a very strong relationship with my dream life. And that's why I felt I could trust it to guide my medical decisions. That also came up in my dissertation, women using their announcing dreams to guide medical decisions based on whether they do amniocentesis, whether they do a home birth, whether, all kinds of different things. So related to that type of wellness and medical care. So I had about 15 years of dream practice, convince me that this was my greatest guide and that my own inner physician in my own consciousness would show up to help me. So with that said, the disclaimer would be, if you're just starting this, really use all of your faculties, all of your intellect, huge second and third opinions from physicians to guide you. Because not only did I do that, but I still think that if this is a new, brand new practice, that we want to be wise and, wise and intelligent about how we choose our medicine, if you will.
Yeah.
Hope that makes sense. Is that kind of
Totally does.
getting
Yeah,
at? Okay.
yeah, thank you so much, that's really
Oh,
interesting, and I got motivated. I'm gonna do that tonight. I'm gonna start doing it. So yeah,
good.
I have
Awesome.
okay, so I have questions. Sometimes a dream, like I have this recurring dream. I mean, it's like every night it's the same dream where I realize I forgot to like empty out my dorm room in college and I like trying to figure out where do I live? Where am I going? Oh my gosh, I left all my stuff there and I never picked it up. Or there's like that feeling of, oh no, I'm still I have to be in college again because I never graduated. And that is literally every single night I have that dream. And my sister has the same dream, which is really
Wow.
interesting. So sometimes they're just murky like that, where I'm just in this repetitive packing thing of like packing things up. But then I often lucid dream. And I had one the other day where nothing was happening. It was just everything was 10 times clearer and crisper and more colorful than a normal dream, and I was very aware that I was dreaming, and I looked at these flowers, and I was just going up and going, "Wow, look at the I can see every little detail in the flower. I can see all the little every little molecule," and so I just thought, "Let's have some fun," and I was just walking around going, look at that mountain, look at this thing, it's so real, and then I started to feel myself coming back into my body, and I was like, and then I woke up, and I was like, "Oh, I think I'm leaving now." But I can when I'm in it, I know I'm in it, and I'm like, let's, like, take advantage of that." So, what is
Yeah.
it that contributes to lucid dreaming? And from your perspective, what is lucid dreaming?
Okay, and I have some questions for you.
Yeah.
I do love though how you in the lucid state you were looking at something from the natural world and
Yeah, me too.
really just seeing it so deeply. So lucid dreaming is being aware that we're dreaming while we're dreaming, and we can really enhance those qualities, at least in my experience, through meditation. But both Eastern and Western science and philosophy have a lot to say about how to cultivate or grow our lucid dreaming skills. So we can look at writings from Tibetan Buddhism. We can, in dream yoga, we can look at writings from, authors here that are really great lucid dreamers in the United States, like Robert Wagner, for example. Also, Robert Moss, Stephen LeBerge, Ed Kellogg. There's so many people. If you're in Europe, look into Claire Johnson's work, and we can learn about these people. I think are wonderful teachers for learning skills to dream in these ways. Also, Amina Mara here in the United States. And if you're in Australia, look into Melissa Johnson. I mean, there's just so many really skilled people that can help us. If you're in Hawaii or California,
Mhm.
look me up, where we can really explore this realm. So something I always remember um, is that from my own experience, and also Ed Kellogg got me to think about this, is the spectrum of lucidity. So we can have some awareness, like so lucidity, let me just back up and say, isn't just an on and off switch.
Right.
We can be lucid in a spectrum. So from some awareness that we're dreaming while we're dreaming, in the dream, to something even really hyper lucid. So the question I would have for you is that if you had enough lucidity, I was going to ask you, did you consider asking the dream, what do I need to know about this college situation? Because you said it's a
Oh,
repetitive dream.
yeah.
It's wanting to get your attention, and I'm wondering if there's something left back at college for you, or what
Yeah.
about identity, or things like that, because you said you lose belongings or orientation about where you should be in your life.
Mhm.
So a dream incubation could possibly
Oh,
be
yeah.
dream, show me what I need to know about this repetitive college dream, or however you frame it according to your experience. And if you're lucid, do what you would do in the dream incubation before you fell asleep.
Yeah. I'm
Show
never
me what
lucid
I
in
need
the
to
college dreams. It's always like, "Oh, I'm
know.
stuck here, and why am I 50 years old and I'm still in college?" And, it's like that feeling of, "But I left here and I put that behind me. Why am I still here?"
No,
So,
not behind you. You go there and your spirit goes there when you sleep.
yes, and the other one that is almost every night is that, well, I mean, I would tell you, I gotta say every night, is that I lose my car in a parking lot. I can never find my car. It's it's always in some huge lot and I forget where it is, or I get to the car and it's been completely dismantled and somebody has taken it apart, and then I have to go down to the tow place,
Mm,
and every single time I go there, I'm like, "This has happened to me 5 times already, you guys. Why does my car keep being taken and dismantled?" And it's like this constant frustration of not being able to find my car.
yeah, that's really frustrating.
I'm like, "Why?
Yeah.
Why?"
Well, it is someone who lucid dreams already. You already have skill and knowledge there, and by increasing meditation practices every day,
Yeah,
those lucid dream skills for a lot of people become enhanced. And then I'm wondering if you can use your lucid dream skills to then directly ask the dream, you
yeah,
so, as we know, we can ask the dream to transport us. So while I've never been to Egypt or the Giza Plateau in this physical waking body, as I hope to someday, I've been to it a few times in my dream body. So we can ask to be transported or directly fly ourselves there, or just say dream, show me a new scene about college. What do I need to know? Or there's so many ways to frame it. Um, there's so many ways to frame it, keeping it simple, straightforward, direct, positive, affirmative, going directly to what we would like to understand, or what, dream, remembering the college situation. What do I need to know about this? And
yeah.
see what you might, you know, be
Ooh,
shown.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna try it if I can get myself out of the dreaming and into, "Oh, wait, this is a dream," which
Mhm.
a lot of times when I have a lucid one, I start to think, "Oh my gosh, I can do whatever I want." And a lot of times it involves, I am going to eat all I'm gonna go to this bakery and eat all
Mhm.
the cupcakes and just eat and eat and eat and eat, and it doesn't matter. And so, like, sometimes I'll have fun with it where I literally just eat sugar, like, eat just, like, massive amounts
Uh-huh.
of delicious food.
Take
Be
me.
yeah, because it's
Take me
like,
with you.
yeah, I mean, maybe because in real life I don't eat sugar, so it's like this, thing. But
Yeah.
so talking about lucid dreaming as it pertains to visitation, because I'm a medium and a lot of people ask me, I get text messages pretty regularly saying, "I had this dream about my loved ones in spirit. Was it a visitation or what does it mean?" And I'll start just by saying how I respond, but I'd like to know everything you know about visitations because I've only had one in my life.
Okay.
And it was what I say is it's usually the difference is when you're dreaming, like you might dream of your loved one and you're like, at a carnival and there's a blue elephant and then, like all these weird things are happening and you're in line for some concert. A visitation is so much more, at least in my experience, more simple. It is a
Mhm.
lucid dream. It is so real that I knew when it was happening that it was real. And nothing was happening. It was just, I don't even know where I was. I was just somewhere. And then my grandfather appeared and
Mm,
he passed when he was 80, but when he came to me, he was like 45. And he
mm,
just looked so good. And I went up to him and I put his face in my hands and I said, "Grandpa, you look so good." And I said, "I can see every pore and every whisker." And I said, "This is so real. I miss you. I love you." And he didn't say a word. He just smiled, which he was a quiet guy. So
Mhm,
that he really wasn't a big talker. He just smiled and he just hugged me. And
mhm,
my grandma was there, but she was just sitting on the side. It was a feeling. It was, "This is so real. I know this is my grandpa." And I could feel his love. And I woke up, went about my day, and then halfway through the day, I looked at the calendar. It was his birthday.
oh,
He'd been gone 11 years, so I wasn't really, we don't always mention it. But I just realized, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. He came on his birthday.
that's beautiful.
It was
That's
and it was amazing, and I know it was real. I haven't had anything like that where it was just that, and then I woke up, and it was just that simple. A lot of times, they'll just say, "I'm okay," or they'll
mhm,
just hug you, or they'll just smile, or they'll just stroke your face, and that's it. So
mhm.
tell me everything about visitation dreams from your
Um,
perspective.
Such a favorite topic of mine. So, um, maybe I should just start for your listeners who may be having visitations around maybe shortly after someone's death, if they're actively grieving. I would look into Joshua Black and his work on grief dreams. They do involve, the deceased spirit, being present in the dream. And he's in Canada. And so I would look into his work because sometimes the question comes up about what's going on within us too for when these deceased loved ones come back. Now, let's talk in this conversation about deceased loved ones because um, I'll acknowledge that for some people, visitation dreams are scary. For some people, a deceased loved one comes back and behaves scary, or it's someone who's deceased but not a loved one. And so that I think is really in a different maybe basket, let's say. And so I can't address that too much because in my own in what I've learned and then also in my experience, it's been very loving. Only one time, and I've had many, many, many visitation dreams.
Mhm.
So only one time did I suspect the deceased loved one, who's very important to me, did I suspect she wasn't who she was. That's only happened one time. And I believe I left the scene. I'd have to look back in my dream dictionary to get um all the details because this was maybe 7 years ago or something like that. It was a long time ago. Only once have I suspected this isn't who it appears to be. So a psychologist named Mary Delaney, I'm not sure if she's in practice anymore, but she was someone I worked with in Arizona for about 2.5 years. And she always told me in whether it was dreams or waking state, hypnotic trances, journeying, whatever we are doing,
Mhm.
to look at the hands and feet. And we can even ask, reveal yourself, who are you? Just to be sure it's a good spirit and that no one's in a disguise. So that's all I can really say about that. That's not an area of expertise, but I can just share those points about whether you're in grief and about whether you suspect, the person to not be who they are and whether you believe there's some dark intention or malintention or whatever it is. Um, so that could be addressed elsewhere by maybe people who practice a different kind of dream arts than I do or may have more knowledge in that. But in my personal experience, what is really common are the deceased loved ones on my father's side of the family reappearing and offering guidance, assurance, visits, or just having a happy time together. Now, of those, when they come back in the dream, they're looking great. It's only one of them that I've had concern about because I think he died in fear and distress. And when he shows up in my dreams, the sense I get is he's maybe stuck because he's kind of acting out some of those behaviors in the dream. where when his deceased wife shows up in the dream, she's having the time of her life. Um, so along with everyone else. My dad's family, you go back a generation or two, and it's pretty large. So I have great aunts and uncles that show up. My grandmother's cousins, people that have been deceased for a long time. So sometimes when I've heard other researchers say, "Oh, that's a grief dream," and I'm like, "No, I don't really think so. My grief's pretty resolved. These people died, you know, uh, 20 to 30 years ago, some of them."
Yeah.
So I don't really believe it's a grief dream, and my spirituality tells me that we're still connected. So maybe I could tell you about something I love to do. So if any of your listeners wants to bring me in for a workshop, I want to tell you about my favorite workshop that I love to do that involves dream incubation, shrine or altar making, and visitation dreams. Um, or I can go into that now, but maybe you have questions or want to share anything.
Just one thing, and then let's go right into that. Thank you for bringing that up. I would say, again, I don't know. I personally don't have experience with dark entities or anything like that. I know that plenty of people in my realm do understand more about that. So I really don't, again, I haven't experienced it, so I'm not equipped to speak to it. But I
Mhm.
will say that the other day, and it isn't that, but my friend reached out because her uncle had just died and her cousin wanted to know. She said, I'm having dreams that my loved ones in spirit, I can't remember how she said it, but it's like they're in some kind of a container or like a grid or something, and I can't see them or touch them, and I'm reaching out and they're not seeing me, and I can't get to them. And I said, "No, I can't say, only you know if it felt real." But to me, that possibly, without only you know, right? If it how real it feels, but I said, "I think that feels to me more like a reflection of grief in where are they? I can't get to them." Like, feeling because her dad just died this last week or whatever,
Oh,
and so it's like
yeah.
that grief of, I just want to see
Yeah.
them and know they're there, and so I felt like it's probably not a visitation, because if it were visitation, it would be there to comfort you, it wouldn't cause you distress. Um, that's just my opinion and my experience, but it doesn't mean that I'm right. It's just sort of something I have felt to be true
We can
is
only go on our experience,
right,
guide us, and
exactly.
then if not, direct to others. Jean von Bronckhorst is another person in Canada who's written about dreams and dying and things like that too. So maybe this person may want to look into the publications of Jean von Bronckhorst, who was a hospice clinical social worker, or again, from a more research perspective, Joshua Black, who researches grief dreams, especially when the death is so current. The grief
Yeah.
is heavy. Yeah. So it's hard to say because our culture and our history and background belief system, all of this informs what we perceive.
Mhm.
And that's so important, to remember. And for example, some people say, "Oh, well, the darkness scares me," but in my experience, we know dreams come from, some say the black dream world, and that the blackness is the source of creation. That is the ultimate beauty, the ultimate creative force is the darkness, is the blackness, and we can go into the black void. For some, that's scary. For me, I haven't had a lot of experiences there, just a few, but each time it's in a place of incredible peace and stillness. And I'm able to usually get there if I start to have a lucid dream and then meditate in the lucid dream,
Mhm.
either with a vocal toning, sound. I have experience meditating with the vowels, a, e, o, u, and getting those vibrations, or just being sitting into, uh, you know, legs crossed or some position, and that can propel me there too. Um, so yeah, so for some, when they have more experience in that blackness, it can be a pure place of peace and love and the beginning of creation. That's what we all come from, is the blackness. But for others, it's frightening. And so
Yeah.
all of this just brings up questions. And, every time I talk about this, whether it's, in a session with therapy clients or on a podcast or in presentations, it's just these that we leave with more questions than we
Yeah.
have answered. So um it is something that, again, we can incubate a dream with a question about it, try to use our lucid dream skills to give us that space to ask again a question about it, um when can I touch, my deceased so and so loved one, when will I be able to speak with them or communicate with them. Different traditions and cultures talk about the times post death of when we can meet, when the spirit's busy, let's just say, and
Yeah.
they're more accessible. Also, we don't know how, let's say we're looking at it from Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, and religion, how are they navigating the bardo, like I said, and I could just name them. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, appears to be stuck when I see him. Stuck is just my perception of it.
Yeah.
Where my grandmother does not. She's having a good time, and
Yeah.
it, it's hard to know. We'll know after death, but I think that's where we met, the International Association for Near Death Studies, the annual conference that just happened. Experiencers tell us what it is like post death, post the body shutting down. And what I was really struck was um how long some of the death experiences lasted. Meaning, by this I mean, people who've been underwater for 30
Mhm.
minutes, knocked out, kayaking accidents, getting trapped under rocks. Another
Vinnie
one,
Tolman.
uh,
Vinnie Tolman was dead for 47 minutes.
yes, and the man who had the accidental overdose, he was an athlete. I think it was a performance, maybe athletic
Yes.
enhancement, right?
I
He was
interviewed
body
oh, that
bag.
that was
They
him.
they
That
body
was
bagged
Vinnie.
him.
Yeah, that's Vinnie.
Yes, they drove him
Yeah.
away in the
Yeah.
ambulance. So people who've been in avalanches, buried under snow for much longer than, right. So we know these people. We've met these
Yeah.
people. We've talked to these people. Um, yeah. Um, was it also, just to go on another train of thought real quick, was it
Yeah.
also Vini that said, I'd have to look at my notes, that said Earth School is the hardest to get into and the hardest to graduate from? Was it him?
I
Oh,
don't remember.
I
I
have
know
to
it's
look at my
I
notes.
know it might be oh, his is one of my favorite interviews that I ever did. It's just a few episodes back, but it's one of the most in-depth and believable because it incorporated all of the things that I personally have all of the knowledge that I've incorporated for myself and made sense of all of these different stories, and somehow things start to come together, and when he told his story, I just went, "Oh my god," it literally incorporated every single thing that I'm starting to understand. So it really resonated with me personally, in terms of that totally makes sense, as wild as it sounds, that this is what's happening, and it is very much like the movie Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep, which is a little dated, but it
Mhm.
is that they go to the other side, and it's kind of how they go to school, and they get on the bus when they get there, and they go to the next route, and it feels very institutional for something that's supposed to be so ethereal, and yet there is some kind of an institutional aspect to what goes on the other side that sounds wild, but isn't life wild, isn't this world wild? Why do we question that that could actually be the case? So it's fascinating, and same dreams are fascinating because what's always fascinated me about them is how you're experiencing things in life and I always thought of it as your brain is creating stories out of these themes. So, but now I wonder if it isn't our higher self because it's so intricate. So the
I think it
symbology
could
of
be
dreams.
both.
I think that's so true, yeah.
I think it's really all in everything. It's both. You know, we could be
Yeah,
processing daily residue. You know, dreams help with memory consolidation. They help with us perceiving, you know, future threats, survival and evolutionary aspects. There's so many reasons we dream. But the more we become conscious in the dream and of all of all of that kind of altered state space, we can do personal investigations and start to differentiate or distinguish between when are we just having a dream where we're kind of processing things we need to know for a day-to-day reason,
yeah.
or maybe something much higher, you know? Yeah,
Yeah, that's such an
yeah.
interesting it's so interesting how it all plays out so perfectly, and it'll be like, "Oh, I had a dream where these things happen, and I met this guy, and then we went to some place, and then we went to the doctor, and then I got sick," and when you wake up, you're like, "Oh, that's because today I had this experience where and this is how I felt." So, it's the same things aren't happening in the dreams, but the things that are happening are evoking the exact same emotion.
Mhm, mhm.
That's what's so interesting to me is how did I create this made up scenario, but that perfectly reflects the themes of what I'm actually experiencing and the emotions that are coming up for me around that.
Dreams, are, I think, just can be our biggest helpers.
Yeah.
If we learn the language of them, let's say. And so I always say that, and many of us dream workers say, throw out the dream dictionary, build your own.
Yeah.
That takes time and practice because you can build your own through having a dream journal and then start to see those repetitive patterns and images come through, right? So a dream dictionary isn't going to do you any good if you're saying, I'm going to look up what a black cat means.
Mhm.
A black cat for me is not
Yeah.
necessarily a black cat for you, or a snake for me isn't a snake for you, or, you know, we need to build our own. And yeah, and so that I'll just stick with that point. We need to make our own dream
I
dictionary.
was gonna ask you about that too because I don't subscribe to a shark means this, a cat means this. I think there it can be. And then also it's more important to pay attention to the emotions that are coming up for you.
Yes, yes.
Like one of my recurring dreams is that I go to Hawaii and I'm excited to be there, but I never quite get to experience it because my family go we all go there as a family, but then no one wants to leave the hotel, and I'm like, "Come on, let's go do stuff." And then I say, "Well, I'm gonna, before we leave, go down to the ocean because that's why we're here, isn't it?" And then I get to the ocean and it's filled with sharks. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, can't go in." So, obviously, that's pretty obvious, like, there's something about holding I feel held back from fully going into the ocean or, like, getting to fully immerse myself in these experiences that I wanna have. Like, there's some block to me. Just being able
Mm,
to swim in the ocean and enjoy myself because there's this threat always, like and every time I have my dream about Hawaii, it's, "Can't go in there, there's sharks," and there's always sharks. I can
mm.
see them, and they're swarming, and so there's something yeah, that's like a block, but, um, the
So,
yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, so a shark for you, you just kind of shared what it means.
Yeah,
In Hawaii, shark is an ancestor. Most my understanding is most of the animals of the ocean are, you know, the turtle, the stingray, the shark, and more. But if one is, let's say, from where you're from, and maybe even where I'm from, which is originally the red triangle of California off the coast,
yeah,
right where all the great whites are. While I've surfed there, I also know that a great white might take me out, even though
sure, yeah,
it's very low. Driving is more dangerous than surfing with great whites, but still, so there's that threat. But if I had, let's say, been born and lived and raised in Hawaii as a native Hawaiian person, then that might have a very different meaning. Perhaps it might even mean to enter the water. I can't say for
right.
sure, but culture and our history is so important in our dream interpretation, and um now that we said ancestors, I'm thinking about the whole shrine making. If
Oh,
you
yes, go into that, and that'll yeah, and then we yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, um, so I am a board member and the ethics chair, or the chair of the ethics committee and board member of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. And so I am very involved with that organization, and I present at most of the conferences. And one of my favorite things to do to present, whether it's at the annual or regional, which I've done this shrine making workshop before, and also private ones. So I'd love to do more of these, is to offer workshops where we talk about visitation dreams, build shrines or altar spaces to either one or a group of deceased loved ones, and then talk about how we can use dream incubation to begin to build a dual directional or almost a feedback loop between the shrine or altar space, and I'm going to use those words interchangeably for now, but the shrine or altar space and the dream incubation practice. And so what I mean by that is, and I shout out to my father who hand builds wooden shrine or altar boxes for every participant. So when I give them to each workshop participant, they're hand built by my father. So I just want to shout out to my dad and thank him so much for making these. And we're ready for the next workshop, by the way. I think he's made me, I have another set of 30 or 40 waiting. So what I do is I bring those to the workshops with all the paints and decor and hot glue guns and, scissors and all, and the fabric and all the things. And we first, of course, call in and thank the ancestors and the deceased loved ones we are there to honor. We talk about visitation dreams, what maybe some people share ones they've had, but sometimes the workshop is actually dominated by people who have not had a visitation dream. And so the workshop is equally important. And I'll tell you why. So we build this dedication, the shrine space or altar space to the deceased loved one or many loved ones in a family line. And then we also talk about dream incubation. So how this is in the home is at the end of the workshop, people learn about dream incubation and visitation dreams, especially if it's new for them. They leave with this beautiful altar or shrine they've made. They put it in a special place in their home, and it can be covered or not. So, there's a whole philosophy around or thoughts around opening and closing spaces. We discussed that too. And then this is our sacred space for those loved ones. So we can operate in two different directions. One direction is we go to the space before bed, pray, give thanks to that deceased loved one, and begin the dream incubation practice right there, asking for them to show up in some way. Go to sleep, see who appears, and do that practice for a week or two. See if they come through. And then go back to the dream space, thank or ask again, or thank them by a way I've done it. For example, one of my first visitation dreams involved my noni, or my grandmother's cousin, we called her noni, who brought me a rose. And so I got a rose and put it at the altar. So that's one direction, right? Another direction, again, it's like a feedback loop and keeps going either way, is to have just some visitation dreams already, and then set up the shrine to not only that honor that deceased loved one, but then show within the shrine maybe objects or things or letters, poems, anything that you can do to honor them from the dreams you've already have, and keep that going in that direction. So you can start with the ask, or you can start with the experience already and still build this beautiful shrine or altar space where you can kind of keep that dual directional space going, and use the space and the bed, the dream, incubation practice in the dreaming state itself, lucid or not, as a kind of feedback loop or, a practice, let's just say. It becomes
Yeah.
practice that you can do for your entire life. So we can use the space to leave letters, offerings, food. We can open and close the space. I'm the type that leaves it open because most often the altars have been in the kitchen or near the kitchen because I like to call them in when I cook Italian food. They were Italian American or some Italian immigrant, just came over off the boat. So I'll wear, maybe their aprons, use I'm lucky to have one of their spoons, wooden spoons, aprons. Of course, that the women of that time did lots of needlework, whether it was cross stitch or embroidery, lucky enough to have some of their fabrics and things they made, pillowcases or whatever, that can be part of the dream incubation practice too, is to use, maybe you fold up that pillowcase and place it in front of the altar and then open it with your request, sleep on the pillowcase. So I'm lucky to have those. For people who maybe, I have family that's been in the foster care system, adopted or fostered, or maybe who didn't get to know at all any family members, we can start to use the dream space and the altar making space to start investigating that, to start trying to call in more ancestral images, memories and things, and have them represented there on the altar space. So that's how it can be, I think of it as a dual directional feedback loop. And
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite workshops to teach or facilitate, because it's so important to me. And it's a practice that I do and have done, for, gosh, it might be almost 20 years in that particular way.
Wow.
I
That's
really
so
wanted to
cool.
share that because I,
Thank
I
you
mean,
so much
I
for
love it.
sharing that. Yeah,
Thank
and
you for listening. It's so
yeah,
important to me. I love it.
of course. And then when I know that you'll probably announce workshops that you'll do, but is I would assume that's all on your website and following you. Do you
Some
do
of it
social?
is.
Yeah. So do you do
Some
social media?
mhm.
Okay. Where can people find you?
I'm consciouschimera.com, and I have Dr. Kim's Conscious Chimera Classroom on Substack. I have consciouschimera.com as the website. And then Conscious Chimera on Instagram. It's a private page, so you need to make the request. And on Facebook, it's my last name first. So Mascaro and then Kim. And that's me on Facebook. But I also have a Conscious Chimera Facebook page, just not as active. So there's many ways to find me, or you can simply even Google my name and I'll come up. So you're reminding me, I need to put probably more about some of these workshops, but I will just say too, I'm really open to invitations
Yeah.
on this. And as long as I can travel with a suitcase, because I need it full of the altar boxes, a small suitcase for some clothing and a larger one for the art supplies, the wooden shrine boxes and the art supplies, then it's something that I can bring to a group, to a community, whether it's private in someone's, home or community center, or to a larger organization. I think the largest group I've done it with is around 25 people at one time. But I have enough boxes. My father's made enough to do up to even 30 or 40 people. But that's probably as much as I'd like for something like this because it's so sacred and so heartfelt
Yeah.
that I really want to hold it in a container. So if it gets bigger than 40, that can get kind of challenging for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kim Mascaro is your last name, but we'll have the links below. This has been such an interesting conversation, and I just appreciate you showing up with your energy and your knowledge and your insights
Thanks so
and
much.
making this podcast, contributing to making this podcast what it is. And I'm pretty proud of it. But I couldn't do it without you. So thank you for showing up.
Thank you so much for having me, and also meeting you at IANDS was great, and you
So
introduced
great.
me to your podcast, 'cause I didn't know, there's so many, but it's great when you meet the person behind one and can then
Yeah.
really kind of dive in. So thank you for all you do and for having me on and, listening to my story and sharing it with your listeners.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks again, Kim.
Bye for now.
Bye. Perfect. Oh, that's so good.